Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to Russia once again, and we're going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. As I've told you in previous reviews, my experiences of Russian beer have been very positive thus far. I first encountered Russian beer back in about 2016 when Malmö Brewing Company in Malmö here in Skåne in the very south of Sweden, they hosted a Russian beer festival, and I was really impressed with the standard back then, and it only seems to have got better since then actually. And I'm really happy that over the last 18 months, 2 years or so, that we've started to see the Russian beers getting out there a little bit more across the continent. So long may that continue, and fingers crossed I can get to Russia at some point and film some out and about videos over there. But in the meantime, I'm quite happy to try quite a few different Russian beers here on the channel for you. So for this one, like I said, we're going to have a look at another brewery that hasn't featured on the channel before. We're going to the Moscow area for this one, and we're having a taste of my first beer from the Black Cat Brewery. So this one is called Cloud9. It comes in at 5.8% ABV, and this one is a New England hazy type IPA. So yeah, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. This is one of the 3 Russian beers that I picked up from Beer Dome in the Netherlands recently, and the main reason that I got this one was simply the fact that I hadn't had anything from this brewery. So the main Russian breweries that we're getting in the EU at the moment are Zagovor, AF Brew, and then Stam Brewing are becoming more easy to get a hold of. The other breweries I should say that you'll see feature later on the channel will be Bakunin and Self-Made, and White Labs actually, they're another one that are becoming more readily available across the continent as well. But as I say, this brewery is new to me. I'm curious about the beer, and there's lots of Russian beers starting to get out there now. So if you haven't tried some of the Russian craft beers already, I'd highly recommend that you do, but fingers crossed this is another very good example of what they're doing over there in the craft beer scene in Russia. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Black Cat Brewery. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Russian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to fairly regularly because we are getting the Russian beers at good intervals over here in the EU now. Long may that continue, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Black Cat Brewery then, on to my brewery notes. So Black Cat Brewery started off as a gypsy contract brewer, however you want to call them, and the company was founded back in 2012 by Andrei Volodin and Maxim Sobkin. A little bit later on they were joined by Kirill Vinokunov as well, who came in as a fellow owner and also as the company's head brewer. But the story of Black Cat Brewery actually goes back a little bit further than this, and it goes to when Andrei flew from Moscow to visit Maxim in Columbus in Ohio over in America where he lives. But they tried some of the local beer together, and you know, they really enjoyed this. I think Maxim was already quite well versed in it, but for Andrei it was a fairly new experience from what I understand. But soon after this they decided that they wanted to start up a business that imported and distributed the American craft beers to Russia, and then a little bit later on this idea evolved, and Andrei met Kirill at a homebrewing festival in Russia, and so Kirill had been travelling around Europe sampling lots of different beers and just picking up knowledge where he could, and then brewing his own versions of these beers at home. But after a few phone calls and things, you know, it was decided that Kirill would join the company because Maxim and Andrei were looking to start producing their own beers in Russia because they felt there was a real gap in the market for this, for Russian produced craft beer. So early on, these guys produced their first beers under contract in Rutsa. Apparently the first beer they released was the 70 IPA, which is a West Coast IPA from what I understand. I'd love to have a taste of that one actually. But then a little bit later on they started producing their beers in their own place in Potvino, which is to the south of Moscow, but these days they have their own premises in the Ryazinsky area of Moscow, which is kind of, it's not too far away from the centre, but a little bit to the southeast of the main kind of central part of Moscow if you like. But this brewery is equipped with a 1,000 litre brew kit which was made in Prius back in the early 1990s, and apparently they had to refurbish this kit quite extensively before they could use it. But Kirill runs the brewing side of the business, whereas Andrei and Maxim take care of the various business aspects such as the marketing, the exports and the sales and all of these kind of things. But the brewery are going quite strong just now. As of December 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced around 90 different kinds of beers so far according to Untappd, and they're looking to produce some beers a bit later on with Russian hops and malts as well actually. So they're saying that they're quite interested to see how the kind of Russian agricultural sector evolves over the next little while, but at the moment it still seems to be the case that it's cheaper for them to kind of import hops from America and things like that as well. But you know, Russia of course has vast swathes of land that would be suitable for like hop growing and things like this. So it'd be really cool to see how if that industry evolves over the next the next couple of decades. Actually, if there's some Russian hops out there, that would be really interesting. But there is Russian malt just now. They say that they tested that, but at the moment it wasn't quite at the standard that they were hoping for. So they're hoping that, as I say, once the kind of techniques and stuff that are used in the Russian agricultural sector start to improve a bit, they can use some Russian hops and Russian malts in their beers going forward, and that would be something I'd be very, very interested to see actually. But yeah, as I say, another really interesting Russian brewery, this one. You get some very interesting stories out of the Russian breweries when it comes to how they got things there. But yeah, cool to see that you know, this is another influence that's come from America, if you like, the whole craft beer movement in Russia. So yeah, pretty cool. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Black Cat Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all of the different beers that these guys have done thus far. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork before we open it up. As you can see, it's a little bit like, it reminds me of the Toy Story clouds. You know, like Andy's bedroom in Toy Story, the clouds that were on the wall. It always reminds me of that, this beer actually. But there you can see on the side of the can, there is the Black Cat Brewery symbol. Just check that the camera zooms in on that and lets you see it. But you can see there is a little bit of a blurb on the back as well, and while I did a Russian course at university, my Russian is nowhere near a good enough standard to kind of read this and translate it for you. Cyrillic, it's really interesting actually. I can sort of read and sound out Cyrillic, but I wouldn't have any clue what the words would actually say. But yeah, it is actually, I'm not sure how well that shows up on the front of the thing there, but it is actually meant to be like kind of fuzzy, if you like, kind of blurry, if you like. The artwork on the can is designed to be. But yeah, that is pretty cool, I have to say. But yeah, as I mentioned earlier in the video, this one is a 5.8% New England IPA, and it's hopped with dry hop with Mosaic, and it's got Citra Cryo in it as well. I did read on Untappd that this beer has Sabro in it as well, but I'm not sure whether that is the case with this particular version. But a half-litre can, and I think I paid maybe about €6.50 or something like this from Beer Dome in the Netherlands. And you will pay a little bit more for the Russian beers, of course, because you know, Russia doesn't have a trade deal with the European Union and things, so you are going to pay tariffs when you import Russian goods into the EU and vice versa, of course. But yeah, half-litre can, this one. Should be a really interesting beer. Let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Mosaic we know quite well, about 14% alpha acid, lovely kind of tangerine orangey character to it, but then you've also got the Citra Cryo in there, which again is 13 to 14% alpha acid. Lots of juicy mangoes, lots of tropical fruit complexities, and yeah, that's it really. But yeah, this one I think should be really quite interesting. I've had some very good examples of IPAs from Russia thus far, so fingers crossed this turns out to be another one. It's quite straight shooting, this, with its Mosaic and Citra, so let's see how we get on with this one. So yeah, as you can see and as you would expect from a New England IPA, this one's poured a lovely bright yellow colour. It does have a little bit of kind of paleness to it almost. I guess I would say that this one, I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different kind of fruit juices, but this one really has the brightness of a big kind of mango juice, but just a little touch of the paleness that you might expect from, say, a pineapple juice or something. But yeah, definitely one of the brighter yellow New England IPAs that you're going to come across. But in terms of the head on this one, I would say it poured with about a 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. That is just fading away now to be a very kind of thin foamy layer. There's quite a nice kind of foamy ring around the edge of the glass there, but overall it does look very nice. If we shine the light through this beer, there is a good degree of haze to this one. The level of haze is pretty big for a 5.8%er. Remember, when it comes to these New England IPAs, the higher the alcohol content, the more oats and the more wheat you have in them, so theoretically speaking, not always, you should get a higher level of haze to these beers, or a higher degree of haze, I guess I should say. But remember, the colour of your beer as well is dependent on two things: one, the type of malts that you use, and two, the length of the boil. I think the New England IPAs tend to be 60 to 90 minute boils quite often. But yeah, it certainly looks like a nice beer, this one. So yeah, it looks the part. It's nothing surprising about the aroma, the appearance of this beer, sorry, when you consider that it is a New England hazy style IPA. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma of this one and just see how we get on. I can smell some of the lovely juicy fruity notes coming out of it already. Right, that's quite interesting. So straight away with this one, you can smell a lovely kind of soft white bready character coming out of it. You can smell that nice kind of, it must be a pale malt base that you're getting out of this one. It does have a lovely kind of soft, just white bready base to it. You can definitely get a little touch of a wheaty, when you take the aroma in a bit more deeply, you do get a little bit of a wheaty bitiness out of it. Soft white bread, like I said, and there's also some very nice kind of oaty sweetness to this beer as well, just oaty smoothness actually. So it's got a lovely malty backbone to it, this one for sure. I really like how this beer goes together in that sense. So yeah, the malty side of this one, I think, is really very, very nice actually. Is there a wee bit of a kind of brown sugary note to the beer? There maybe is a wee touch of a, there's maybe a wee touch of like a tiny Werther's Original note in this one, but it's quite hard to kind of detect it, to be honest. You've really got to look for it. I would say that overall the malty base of this beer comes across as being quite smooth, a little bit oaty, and just, you know, kind of bready overall, to be honest with you. So that's a really interesting point to make about this one. Quite a smooth, straight up smelling malt base, this one. The other thing I'm curious to see about this beer is with the cryo in the citra hop, because usually in my experience cryo makes the overall mouthfeel of the beer a little bit more kind of oily and slick, if you like. So I'm curious to see what effect it has in this one. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the hoppy side of the beer then. So yeah, with this beer then, on the green side of things, you do get a nice little bit of floral aromaticity coming out of the beer. Yeah, good little bit of floral aromaticity to this one. There's a bit of lighter grassiness in there, but overall I would say that the beer comes across with a little bit more of a kind of spicy, floral aromatic quality coming out of it. But yeah, I really like how the aroma of this one comes across actually. Lovely big floral aromaticity and some lighter kind of grassy notes in there. It's kind of what you would expect from both of these hops. There is a little touch of earthiness from the Mosaic as well. Mosaic can give you some really nice earthiness out of the beer. So yeah, on the fruity side of things then, I think we've covered the green side of the beer well enough so far. But on the fruity side of things, again, it's kind of what you would expect from these hops that are in here. You've got a lovely bit of a kind of more oily tangerine note that starts to, the more you smell of this one, the more you start to get that, and you get a really oily smelling mango out of this one, and that's the Cryo Citra. As I've always said to you, when you put hops into New England IPAs, the fruits tend to come across as really soft and juicy, if you like. If you put the same hop into a West Coast IPA, which is a more caramel sort of sweet orientated malt base rather than being smooth, you really start to get the more oily characters out of the fruits. But I've found that if you put, I've noticed this in a few beers now, that if you put Cryo into these New England IPAs, you really do get a little bit more of the oily character that you would normally expect of the hops in a West Coast IPA. So that's a really interesting point to make about these beers that have got cryo in them. One thing I would say about this beer too is that when you sugar the beer up, you do get a little bit of that kind of dustiness from the dry hopping. You can really smell the dustiness of the beer from the dry hopping side of things coming out a little bit. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting point to make about this as well. But yeah, lovely little bit of juicy mango to this one. You can smell it's just a bit more oily and a bit slick. You've got some nice kind of oily tangerine notes in there, and you do have quite a little bit of a kind of sharper lemony zesty quality on the very edge of your nose as well, which is quite interesting, to be honest with you. There's maybe a wee touch of pineapple or something coming out of this one as well, but I think it's the Citra that's probably most likely to give you that bit of zesty edge that the beer has, unless there is another bittering hop in here as well. But you know, from the aroma, I wouldn't say that, to be honest. I mean, there could be a wee bit of you know, Columbus or something there. The beer, the deeper in you take the aroma of this beer, the more kind of spicy it becomes, to be honest. But yeah, I certainly like how everything pieces together in this one. So take a bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. I think this one's going to be quite nice. So yeah, let's have a taste of this beer then and see how we get on. This one is the Cloud9, a 5.8% New England IPA with Mosaic and Citra Cryo in it. I don't know about Sabro, we might be able to taste that, but this one comes to you from the Black Cat Brewery in the Ryazansky area of Moscow over in Russia. Always cool to review some of these Russian beers for you. Let's get stuck in. Slanja, skol, na zdravie. Oh, nice, yeah. That's a really, it's got a really interesting mouthfeel, this one, actually. That's the first thing that strikes me about this beer. This has a real wetness to it. That's really interesting. I've never come across a beer that's quite like this one, I have to say, in terms of its mouthfeel. Yeah, that's really, really interesting, I have to say. Now, one thing I've always said about, you know, Scandinavian beers, especially, you notice it in the breweries from further north here in Sweden and some of the Norwegian guys as well, you really notice just the cleanliness of the water. This one is almost like taking that to the extreme. This is a really, really, this beer just feels almost like Arctic pure, if you like. It really comes across like that in its mouthfeel, though. You just get a real wetness out of this one, which is really interesting. I've never had a beer that's quite had a mouthfeel like this, but it does come across really nicely, this beer. This one, I'm going to say, it gets a thumbs up from me. At 5.6%, this is a fairly sessionable New England IPA. Definitely fair to say that. But yeah, flavour profile of this is really very, very nice, actually. So thumbs up to the Black Cat Brewery for pulling this one off. I think this is very, very nice. Certainly, this makes me very curious about some of their other beers, because I think out of the ones that were on Beer Dome, this is the one that I think was the lowest alcohol content, and I think I bought this one just because I liked the name of it and I liked the artwork, and it reminded me of the Toy Story clouds. I mean, when you're presented online with beers from a brewery that you don't know, really it just comes down to the artwork or the name or something like that striking you. That really is part of the battle with craft beers, to be honest with you, when it's new breweries that you're trying. So yeah, this is just the one that caught my eye, but this certainly, as one of their kind of lower alcohol ones, this certainly makes me curious about some of the other stuff that they're doing. I'd love to, as I say, have a go at the 70 IPA. That would be awesome. So fingers crossed we see more of Black Cat over here in the EU at some stage. But yeah, this one does come across very, very nicely, so big thumbs up to Black Cat for this. Yeah, where to start with this beer then? I mean, straight away with this one you can feel that lovely kind of white bready pale malty quality. That blankets the middle of your tongue, and it goes towards the back third of your tongue as well. The smoothness that you get out of this beer really is very, very nice. As you go on to the back third of your palate, you can feel that that breadiness just thickens up a wee bit. You really get a nice little bit of thickness just pushing its way out of this beer. You can feel that there's a wee touch of a wheaty bitiness at the back of the tongue as well, but it's not too overpowering, if that makes sense. It just has a little bit It certainly just has a little bit of that that kind of wheaty bitiness, but it suits it. It really does. Having a slightly thicker bready character on the back third of the tongue suits this beer down to the ground. And it's so easy to drink as well. I have noticed that with some of these Russian beers actually, that the beers always tend to have these IPAs always tend to have a nice smoothness and just drinkability to them. So yeah, I mean, I've drunk about half of the can of this already, which is, that to be fair, that is a little bit unusual for my reviews. Usually I'm sipping these. This is just, you know, super easy to drink. But yeah, in the middle third of your palate, as I say, when you go to the back third of your palate, the breadiness just thickens up a wee bit, but then as you move further forward, you can feel that the thickness just drops away as you move into the middle third of your palate. You can feel that lovely, soft, but still quite smooth white bready character, and in the middle of your tongue you can feel there's a little bit of a circle there. That's you know, it's like a kind of smooth oatiness actually, but yeah, quite a bready leaning New England IPA in my mind. I really like how this goes together. But yeah, the malt base is very straight shooting. This is quite like, you know, the IPAs that I would have been drinking here in Sweden in like 2016 or so, you know, the GBG Beer Week, the Amazing Haze, all of these kind of things. So this is a bit more of an old school type IPA in my mind. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate you do have a little touch of earthiness coming out of this one. And that spreads forward a little bit, but as you move further forward, there is a little bit of a herbal quality to it, and as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, you do get a nice little bit of floral aromaticity coming out of this one. It does get a little bit of a slightly floral, it's not quite spicy, but it just has a little bit of that kind of aromatic character to it. Round the front curve of the palate, of course, it's a wee bit lighter and more grassy. And as I was saying earlier with the mouthfeel, one of the things I think that's kind of making this beer so kind of clean and drinkable, if you like, is probably the cryo. You can detect this straight up with the fruity side of this beer. So let's focus on that now. Let's focus on this. So yeah, as I always say, on the front third of your palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So when you go to the back of that front third of your palate, you get a nice little touch of a darker passion fruit there, but very quickly it becomes really soft and juicy mango. That's the cryo citra that's doing that. The fruits on this beer are actually really quite slick in a lot of ways in my mind. It's got a really nice kind of slickness to it, this. So lovely soft mangoes. Maybe you'll get a few like papaya type notes out of this one. I wouldn't say apricot with this beer, more like a kind of very soft papaya. And as you reach the front half of that front third of your tongue, there is a nice little bit of a more oily tangerine quality to the beer as well. So yeah. So yeah, I do like that front part of I do like the kind of orangey notes that come out of this one. I think the further that you go into the aftertaste, you start to get more of that kind of more oily, but very juicy tangerine note from the mosaic in this one. I love how the mosaic just comes out a little bit later in this beer. But yeah, there's one or two little kind of gooseberry elements to this one, and you do get a wee bit of a kind of citrusy, almost limey zest on the very edge of the palate there as well, which is quite nice, and that'll be the citra kind of cryo. But the cryo oil that's put in this from the citra really gives the fruits just a nice slickness there, but you can feel the slightly more oily mosaic note coming out of this one. I don't think I would ever want to use just, you know, only cryo in an IPA. I think I would want a little bit of the more oily character you get from hop pellets, to be quite honest, but just my personal opinion. You guys, of course, are welcome and might well disagree with that. But yeah, I have to say, this is a beer that's really kind of grown on me the more that I drink of this. This is a very, very nice beer, this one. Really easy to drink, and I think you get more and more flavour out of it the further that you progress into the aftertaste. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. I would say that in terms of the style, it doesn't do anything surprising. It's just really well crafted, and you know, you cannot ask for much more than that in these days when there's so many New England hazies out there. You can't ask for much more than what this beer's providing. Just really well executed, really nice example of the style. And the thing, as I say, that really strikes me with this one is the mouthfeel. So let's focus on that now then. So for me, this beer is really, it's kind of bottom end of of mid-bodied. The carbonation is really, really smooth in this one. The beer just has a real cleanliness to it. It feels really like almost Arctic fresh, if you like. It's like glacier water. It really just comes across like that. And you know, when you think that this brewery is in the middle of Moscow, and I guess probably they will be doing water treatment and stuff like this, but it's just weird to think that you know, that this beer, if I was blind tasting this, I would think this was from, like, you know, Greenland or you know, far up in Norway or something like that. That's where you would think this beer comes from on the basis of the mouthfeel. It has a real clean, just that real clean, almost Arctic kind of cleanliness to it. So it's really quirky in that regard in my mind. So yeah, thumbs up to Black Cat for pulling that off. That is a little bit of a kind of rabbit out the hat in some ways. But yeah, on the in terms of hoppy bitterness, this beer's got like very, very little IBUs to it. I mean, it must be, you know, 20 at the absolute most, 15 maybe. It really is no more bitter this than some of the kind of Hefeweizens and things that you'll find. I mean, I think the standard bitterness for a Hefeweizen is like 15 IBUs. And it feels that it's about that kind of level, to be honest with you, maybe even less. I think this one could be about sort of 15 IBUs or something like that. Very, very little bitterness to this beer, but the malt base, like I said, is really lovely and smooth. There is a wee little touch of a kind of creaminess to it as well. You do get a wee bit more of the oaty character coming out of this beer the further you go into the aftertaste, and the fruits have a little bit of oiliness to them. They are slightly juicy, but I mean, overall, this is just a really, really nice kind of top class beer in my mind. I think this one goes together very, very nicely. So big thumbs up to the Black Cat Brewery for this. I think they've pulled off an awesome beer here, and I'm glad I was able to review this one for you and to introduce this brewery for the first time here on the channel. Fingers crossed we can come across a few more of their beers at some point in the future. But yeah, this was awesome. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one was the Cloud9, a 5.8% New England hazy IPA, however you want to call it, from the Black Cat Brewery in Moscow. Really impressed with this one, really crazily drinkable, and hopefully, as I say, we can try more from these guys soon. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from the Black Cat Brewery. We will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the near future, but in the meantime, thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out Black Cat Brewery, check out my Russian craft beer playlist, and you will be seeing more beers added to that over the next little while. But until the next time, Slanja, Skol, cheers, and I'll catch you guys very soon.